When I think back on on all of my past relationships, there's one in particular that I knew he was going to be a pain in the rear end from the beginning, and that the relationship was not going to end well. And you know how I knew it was not going to end well? Because he kept texting me at 8:05 p.m. So, my name is Keshia Rice. I am a dating coach and hypnotherapist. Welcome to Christianish. This is a podcast that is all for women who have Bibles but lack boundaries. And we're going to be talking about boundaries today. So, welcome whether you are joining me on YouTube or whether you are listening on any of the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple. I'm glad to have you. So, I wanted to talk about boundaries and why they are so crucial for relationships. So the whole thing about this guy texting me at 8:05 p.m. When he and I were dating, I was working a job that was night shift. And because it was at nighttime and I had to go to bed early, whenever I dated someone, I always told them, hey, just so you know, I don't accept phone calls after 8 p.m. because I'm going to be asleep at that time. So, you can call whenever you want. But again, if you call after 8, I'm not going to be answering. And this guy, when I told him that, he was like, yeah, that's great. That's fine. I completely understand that. So what he would always do is wait a couple of minutes after 8, so like 8:05, and he would send me a text message. And it was always, oh, I know you said, don't call after this time, but I thought I would text just to see if maybe you were still awake, maybe you hadn't gone to bed yet, and we could talk for a few minutes. And at first, I would go along with that. If I was already in bed at that time, I didn't answer the phone. And if I was awake, I would say, okay, it's fine. I can talk for a couple of minutes. I haven't gone to bed yet. And whenever I would do that, without fail, the next couple of days, he, felt it free to call me after 8 p.m. And this is something that you have to watch out for, is someone who is a habitual line stepper, someone who may not break your boundaries in practice, but they'll break it in spirit. So the texting at a time that I said not to call. And it is things like this that will happen at the beginning of relationships that if you're not paying attention, you will find yourselves in relationships that deplete you, that exhaust you, and that aren't aligned with what you want or with, the vision that God has for your life. So I wanted to talk about boundaries and, how to set them and why they are so important. So I've heard this said plenty of times that when you are creating relationships, you never want to have walls up, because walls make it difficult for someone to come into your life. Walls put up a boundary from people being in relationship with you. You can't see them on the other side of the wall. They can't get in. You're not being vulnerable. And that blocks you off from what could potentially be a good relationship. On the other hand, what you want to do is you want to put up fences, because fences are different. Fences, yes, they protect you and they help keep you safe and they're secure, but fences also allow you to see through them. They allow you to open a gate to let someone in, and then you can also shut the gate to keep people out. You have that protection and that security, but at the same time, you also have the space to be vulnerable and to let people in. So when we set boundaries, we have to remember that boundaries are not about, making it difficult for other people to be in relationship with us. And they are not about punishing people. Boundaries are the parameters that we put in place so that we can be the best for ourselves, and also so that we can be the best for other people, so that we can be the best girlfriend, wife, daughter, sister, whatever the relationship is. So boundaries are actually the least selfish thing that you can do, because when you set boundaries, you are creating a space where you can show up better for the people who care about you, and for the people who would have taken advantage of you had you not had these boundaries in place. These are people who don't care about you to begin with. So you're also learning who is and who isn't for you, which again, once you get those people out of your life, you're able to devote more time and energy to the people who are supposed to be in your life. So, when we think about boundaries, the benefits of them are they prevent us from becoming emotionally exhausted, they prevent resentment, and they keep us from being taken for granted. And they allow us to give other people love and grace while we also honor ourselves at the same time. So, we talk so much in faith. So I'm Christian, and that is also the case for most of my clients, but I also work with other women of faith, so Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, and all that. And one of the things that all these have in common is this idea that, God is love and that we're supposed to love one another. There's a difference, though, between loving other people and being a doormat. And, when we look at Jesus, for example, he had boundaries. He withdrew in order to pray alone. He said no when it was necessary. And he didn't entrust himself to everyone. So, particularly for Christians, when we're talking about being like Christ, it is incredibly Christ-like to set boundaries. So let's talk about 5 things that you need to do in order to set some healthy boundaries. The first thing is you want to be clear on what it is that you need to begin with so that you know what boundaries you have to set. So you need to look at the different areas of your life and know where you're being overextended, where you're being drained, where you're being disrespected. And something I always say to my clients is that all relationships are related. So if you show me a woman who has issues with setting boundaries in romantic relationships, I can guarantee you that she also has issues with setting boundaries in the workforce, or if she's a business owner with her clients, she also has issues setting boundaries with family members, with friends. Again, these are all related. So take the time, write it out, get your journal, and look at all the areas in which you are feeling exhausted. And then decide, okay, based on these are the boundaries that I need to set. The example I used at the beginning in my own life, because I was working a night shift, I needed to be in bed at a certain time. So that was a boundary with everyone, not just with men I dated, but with family members and friends as well. I did not accept phone calls after 8 p.m. So that is the first thing that you want to do when you're setting boundaries, is you want to identify what it is that you need. The second thing you want to do is communicate clearly and kindly. So one thing, again, that I'm always telling my clients is that I am not a nice person, because nice gets taken advantage of. Nice gets walked all over. Instead, I am kind. I have empathy for others. I do my best to consider other people's feelings and other people's wants and needs. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to put those ahead of mine, but I do thoroughly think about like how I can best show up in relationships in a way in which both me and the other person are both getting what we need. But again, I am not nice. I am not a pushover. And when you set boundaries, you want to set them and enforce them in a way that is kind, but also you want to be firm in what you're setting them. So you can say things like, if someone wants you to do something that's going to take up too much of your time, you can say, hey, that's not something I can commit to, but I appreciate you considering me. I appreciate you thinking of me. If someone, again, wants your time when you would not be available because of a boundary set, again, the whole example of, being in bed at a certain time, or even let's say you spend your mornings in prayer, you spend your mornings in meditation or working out, you have a set morning routine, and someone wants to interfere with that, you can say, hey, I need this quiet time to start my day, but if you want to do something later, or I can handle this later, I don't mind that. So you want to be kind and you want to be firm. The third thing that you want to keep in mind is that you need to be consistent. because when you start setting boundaries, people will test them. They will either outright, disregard the boundary, or again, I mentioned this ex-boyfriend of mine. He was a line stepper. He would text to see if then he could call. So sometimes people don't always mean to do this. Sometimes it's unintentional with them setting boundaries. They may be, set in their ways and they've developed certain habits, but that doesn't mean that that's okay. If they are stuck in a habit, then you still have to enforce it and let them know, like, hey, this is a boundary that I have set, and this is not something that I'm going to break. If they care about you, they will learn to adapt. And getting into that, the fourth thing that you want to do is let go of the guilt, because there is so much guilt that often comes with this idea of setting boundaries, that if I set boundaries, I'm no longer a nice person. Again, you're not nice. You're kind. You want to be kind to everyone, but not nice. And people always have this idea, especially women, because we're conditioned to take care of others and nurture other people, that self-care is selfish. And as I said before, self-care is the least selfish thing that you can do. Because once you truly take care of yourself, you're able to love other people from the overflow. You're able to love people from a place of this is something that you want to do, and not from a place of feeling burnt out and from resentment. You're able to show up better for the people that you truly care about. I keep harping on this example of like not taking phone calls past a certain period of time because you need to get your sleep. But, that was not just about my sleep, but it was also about the fact that if I'm not tired, I'm having better conversations. I'm more engaged. I can listen better because I'm not sleepy. So it means that I can better listen if a friend or a family member or if my husband is talking to me about a problem. I'm able to better engage in that conversation, and I can show up for them better as well. So it's not just for me. And the fifth thing that you want to do when you're setting boundaries is you want to trust, again, that the people who are meant to be in your life are going to respect those boundaries. You need to get rid of the scarcity mindset and the idea that if you set boundaries and you enforce them, people are going to stop loving you. People are going to stop, wanting to be in your life, wanting to be in a relationship with you. You will lose some people, but you're only going to lose the people who weren't meant to be in your life in the first place. So you need to trust that when you are setting these boundaries, that it is a way of God helping you steer you in the right direction of the people who are meant to be in your life. So setting these boundaries is a matter of self-love. And it's also an act of faith, because again, you're trusting that the people who aren't meant to be in your life, that they will show themselves the door, and the people who are meant in your life are going to stay in your life if they're already there, or that by setting these boundaries, you have made room for the people who are truly meant to be in your life to come in. So, ask for wisdom, ask for guidance in your prayer time, in your meditation time. But also trust that you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to take up space, and you're allowed to honor yourself and to honor your purpose in life. So let me know if you have any extra questions about boundaries, anything that you want help, with specific examples for. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can do that here on YouTube. If you are listening to the podcast, then you can do that by coming over to YouTube and leaving a comment in the comment section. Or I'm also at Keshia Rice on Instagram and on TikTok, so you can DM me there and ask questions. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, then the link is in the description. So I will talk to you soon. Love you so much. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.